Welcome to Cocktails in the War Room, everybody. What's going on? It's Mistress Carrie. Every Tuesday night at 8:30, we meet right here in the War Room to have a cocktail. So I thank you very much for joining me, and want to say hello to everybody that is checking in, especially the War Room family, as they call themselves, the diehards that have been joining me here in the War Room since March 14th, which was our first episode. And if I am not mistaken, this is episode 99. And we will celebrate the 100th episode of Cocktails in the War Room coming up next week. So I want to thank you guys all for joining me. I want to thank Latini Creative Solutions for sponsoring not only this week's episode of Cocktails in the War Room, but also the Mistress Carrie podcast this week. If you need any kind of graphic design or logo work done for your company, you can go to latinicreative.com to get all of that. And also sponsored this week by Jumptown Skydiving. If you have ever wanted to go and jump out of an airplane, you can go to jumptown.com, get all the details on how it works, what you need to do, and make an appointment. They take appointments for tandem skydives every Thursday, Friday, Saturday, and Sunday. And we are now getting into peak leaf peeping season. So if you want to leaf peep like a motherfucker, you can do it at 120 miles an hour from 2.5 miles above the earth and check out the leaves that way. So go to jumptown.com. We have a lot to talk about tonight. Obviously, the news coming in at about 3:30 this afternoon, the loss of 65-year-old Eddie Van Halen. There are pillars in the pantheon of rock and roll, and we lost a pillar of rock and roll today. There's no other way to talk about it. So we're going to talk a lot about Eddie Van Halen. I've got some announcements about the podcast and some new additions. So there's a lot of great news, but I figured right out the gate, let's do a podcast recap. And of course, episode 17 of the Mistress Carrie podcast was Kevin Barbare, who, sorry, I just had a picture in front of your face. So Kevin, how are you?
Hi, I'm great. How are you?
I'm good. We wanted to give you a chance to come in for an after action report. So Kevin is live from his home studio, which we talked about in the podcast episode. And I appreciate all of the custom purple lighting because you're on Cocktails in the War Room tonight. So thank you.
You're welcome. I'm sorry that people missed when I was on with you before. I had the little thing set up that said "Hello, Carrie" on it. I didn't do that tonight.
That's all right. You did it for the audio portion of the programming, but not for the video portion of the programming.
Right. Just for you.
I appreciate that. How are you? Thank you so much for doing the podcast last week. A lot of great feedback. Shannon says, great episode. Heinz says, wicked cool. Tim says, loved the podcast episode. Eric says, hello, guys. R.I.P. Eddie. Joe says, it's his own purple room. And Amanda says, love the episode. So
nice.
I thought it was really cool. You had texted me after we actually recorded the podcast episode saying, like, did I do enough voices? Was it funny enough? But I really like the fact that we kind of talked about serious stuff and this shared kind of experience that we had at WAAF. And I loved the backstory, and I loved hearing you talk about how you formulate a voice. Mm-hmm. And I thought now that we're going to be able to see you, I thought we could start by you giving an example of how you break down an impression, not only with your voice, but also with, because when you do Jeff Goldblum, you always do his hand gestures and stuff too.
Right.
So if you were going to break someone down in order to do an impression, how do you do it?
Well, if I'm doing the impression without looking at someone else doing it and just coming up with it on my own, it usually begins with mannerisms. If someone has mannerisms, Greg or Mike Shearer, anybody can tell you. You've been in the studio and run our board before. You've seen when I did voices, I would. Like with Jeff Goldblum, I would be doing those in the studio,
even though nobody could see them. Yeah,
correct. Yeah, and I would put on like I don't think I wore glasses at the time, so I'd just be like, putting the glasses on, and be like, Greg, there's dinosaurs in the break room, that kind of thing. So it starts with mannerisms. It starts with finding little tics and affectations that people have, and of course, getting their tone of voice. I've been lucky enough to be able to go super low with my voice as well as super high. So it gave me a lot of, a lot of range. And the fact that I came from the South, but I don't necessarily have one of them Southern accents.
You're not super twangy, no.
Right. It put me in a good gray area to go Southern with the Southern people and Northern with the Northern people. And it kind of blended when I go to California and things like that. So that's been a big help.
Mark Bishop was asking about Christopher Walken because we did not talk about Christopher Walken in the podcast.
Yeah. Hi, Bish. Bish was one of our regular listeners.
Yeah.
He used to visit us a lot. Hi, Bish. The thing about Christopher Walken is he doesn't use punctuation when he talks. He just keeps talking. And sometimes he goes high, and sometimes he goes low, and sometimes he whispers. We're in the war room. We don't want to wake any of the warmongers in this room. So it's that kind of thing where it's just all over the place. His voice is very unique, and a lot of people do it. So
yeah, there are certain ones like Arnold Schwarzenegger, Sylvester Stallone. Like these are famous impressions that so many comedians and voice actors do, but you always found a way to make it different and your own in a way.
Yeah. And it was also something I was having to do on a regular basis. When Arnold was governor of California, I was going in the studio weekly and making up a song about whatever was going on in the news related to Arnold Schwarzenegger. So, and on the radio, those were more of a parody. I mean, they're more like, very excited and Greg, you're so stupid. And Carrie, go get the couch and throw it out the window. But, in real life, he's more like, wear your mask and spay and neuter your pets and don't have babies with your maid when you live with your wife. Those kind of things. So.
Did you hear the news that Dazed and Confused is doing a live streamed table read of the script with the cast? And
my goodness.
I know. And I know you do Matthew McConaughey.
Yes, I do. It's more of the, the way he is now. So a lot of the things he says, he believes he might be an older version of that character, but he's actually not. So he takes all of his apples and he puts them in one basket, and then he throws that basket out the window. And that's how it happens.
Sean said, Brad says, Kev, stop moving the camera. I'm getting nauseous. I feel like I'm watching the Blair Witch Project.
Blair Witch Project? I was just thinking the same thing. My cat just pushed my studio door open, and I thought it was a fucking ghost. I went over and I was like, what? Which would be appropriate. Like you and I are talking to each other in our favorite time of year.
I know.
Which is Halloween.
I know.
And so it was appropriate. But yes, I'll stop moving the camera because I was thinking the same thing. Blair Witch Project.
Yeah. Or as one of the stories, when I started the War Room 99 episodes ago, which I can't believe, I started talking about a lot of the old AAF stories and about the story of interviewing Marilyn Manson on his tour bus when he had this dildo cam and he was, and it was wired to this television in the front lounge of his tour bus. And when I walked onto the bus with Adam, our old promotions guy, he had the dildo in his pants and he was looking at the underside of his nuts on the giant TV screen in the bus. And he called it the Blair Dick Project. And so every time I hear the Blair Witch Project, and like Dita Von Teese was sitting at the table in the front lounge and she was like, darling, why do you have to show everyone how hairy you are? And I was just like, I'm looking at Marilyn Manson's balls on TV. I'm supposed to be interviewing him right now. Like, it's just, so anytime anybody ever says Blair Witch Project, I just think about Marilyn Manson's genitalia and I can't help it. And now you will too. So you're welcome.
Wow. I'm surprised I've never heard that story. I'm also surprised that he's hairy down there. You would think he's like, he's hairless.
Trim.
I don't know why.
Yeah, I don't know. He was, and it like the hairs were like huge because it was like a 35-inch flat screen TV in the front lounge of the bus. And at first, and it was black and white. And at first I was like, what is that on the screen? And then
a tarantula.
And then he pulled this clear plastic dildo and it had a light on the head with the camera out. And then he put it on his ear and you could see all the ear hairs. And then he goes, I want to see where all my money goes. And he put it on his nostril. And then his nostril hairs were all huge. And then he just looked at me and he goes, you? And I was like, no, I'm good. And then literally like a light switch, he just sat down and goes, so what do you want to talk about? And I was like, dude, I was just looking at your balls. Like,
Wow.
can you give me a second?
How many years ago was this?
It was Ozfest, so it had to have been, I think, probably early 2000s, whatever year. Can you guys in the War Room, can one of you guys get on the Google machine and figure out what year Marilyn Manson was on the Ozfest for me? I don't
Is
have
he still with her?
No, they're divorced. No.
Okay, I thought
No.
so. I remember him dating the actress there, whose name
Rose
I can't remember.
McGowan? Or
Evan Rachel Wood.
Oh, Evan Rachel Wood, yeah.
That's the last person I remembered him being with, so I wasn't sure if...
I don't have
anything.
a young Jamie like Joe Rogan does, so I have to ask the people in the War Room to Google for me, and then they put up links in the comments. So if you go back and watch and look at the comments after the War Room's over, there's just these random links and weird things. At 2002, Jillian says. Mark says 2003. Jillian says 2001. So I think it was on it multiple years. So it was somewhere in the early 2000s.
Interesting.
Yeah,
okay.
It's very strange. So what are some of the other impressions that we probably should have talked about in the podcast that we didn't? Or if you guys have favorites, put them in the comments. And it was probably, 2001, 2003, he said. So something like that is coming up in the comments a lot. But what other impressions do you guys want to hear Kevin do before we really start diving into Eddie Van Halen talk tonight? Because obviously, that's the biggest story for all of us. And
I do have a couple of...
well, I want you to tell your Eddie Van Halen stories. That's why I'm saying, like, if there's any other impressions that you guys want Kevin to do, let's do them now before Kevin starts telling Eddie Van Halen stories, because I know we got a couple really good ones. Hello, just got on. No problem, Lisa. It's good that Morgan Freeman.
Oh, yeah. Trying to think what I can say is Morgan Freeman. I remember the first time I met Mistress Carrie. She came in with that double extra mochaccino for me that I never paid for, and I appreciated it. I don't know. That's all I got.
Kimberly says, first year without Rock and Shock. It's definitely the apocalypse. It's so sad.
Yes, there was a... so I took over Rock and Shock. I mentioned this in your audio podcast. I took over Rock and Shock and started an events company with a partner in the music business. And we were going to do it this year, but right after we, started planning it is when the virus and the lockdown and all that stuff started. As of right now, nobody can even do those kind of events. So we won't be doing one this year, but we will be doing a horror convention next year. We're changing the name of it to the Rock with a letter N, the Rock and Horror Weekend. And we'll still be having the musical acts, which will get bigger and better, and we'll expand to other cities. And there'll be some other things too. We'll be doing a vinyl convention I mentioned to you, and an oddities and antique sideshow convention, all kinds of stuff that, little cool things that basically will satisfy me and my partner's interest, but also, gauge how many fans like these kind of things. So there's really no way to do it this year that would be any fun. So we're just
there's no way to really do anything this year and do it the right way. It's so hard.
Right.
Let's see. Donna says, Samuel L. Jackson. Did you ever do, it's really hard to do him on the radio because he says fuck like every other word.
Yeah, I think I might have done some, there were definitely some times when I did him, and it was a very limited thing. I don't remember what the bits were, but I know I did, some Phantom Menace bits, and I did something that was Snakes on a Plane. It was a parody, but I don't remember what it was. Like people from Mark Wahlberg on a plane, I think, or something like that. But, I really can only think of that one line. I am sick of these motherfucking snakes on this motherfucking plane. That's all I can think of for it.
Did you, because you do a lot of voice work. Like
yes.
That's your home studio. So I have MCHQ. Do you have a nickname for your studio, by the way? Did you name your studio?
My business, I guess, was kind of named by a listener. When I was let go, they started this campaign to try to get me back. And at the time, obviously, it wasn't working, and it was called Viva Barbary. So the business is called Viva Barbary, but there's no name for the studio. I'll have to come up with something. There's so much stuff going on in here because I'm a big synth person.
Yeah, you got keyboards and stuff all over the place, and it's crazy.
Yeah. So it's It's gonna have a name. I haven't thought of it yet. I have, we in the basement we have more keyboards, and I call that the spacement. So this could all transfer down there at some point, maybe. Who knows?
With all the voice work that you do, and obviously who's been in the White House the last 3.5 years, have you mastered your Donald Trump impression?
Oh yeah, absolutely. I've gotten a lot of work as him. Some of the funniest stuff I've done has either been uh, outside of commercials. I've actually been the voice of Trump on some cartoons and on some toys. So I don't know which toys they are because it's been just like a rapid, but I can tell you this: they're the best toys you've ever seen. Nobody's got any toys better than us. Many people are saying the masks, could win a Nobel Prize. I love the Nobel family; they're great people, and I would love to talk more about it. But I just got over the COVID, and what happened was Biden touched Melania, Melania touched me, and I'm pretty sure it came from Joe Biden. That's pretty much right. Excuse me, I'm talking. Excuse me. And I'm pretty sure that's where it came from. He probably had fake fingerprints from China because China hates me. And that's the end of the story.
Oh, God. All right. So let's talk about, it's so funny to watch you. I mean, I watched you work for years, but it's so funny to watch like comments, like even just us swearing, people think is so crazy because they listen for years and we could never swear. And now they're watching us swear and they're like, wait, you guys swear? It sounds so weird for your voices to have swears now because we couldn't on the air for so long.
I think one of the things that I want to say we were probably one of the pioneers of starting way long ago is doing bits on the radio where I would swear and bleep it out.
Yeah. Which sounded way more convincing and way more realistic.
Yeah. When I would do phone calls back when we had actual touch tone phones, I would go in the other room, and when I would swear, I would just hit 3 of the buttons on the phone and just go, "You fucking blah, blah." And people thought it was hilarious. Sometimes I would actually be told, you need to bleep it a little longer because it sounds like too much of the word. But I credit AAF with starting that kind of weird thing on the radio as much as I credit Greg with coming up with the word Mantown. As you know, I don't think anybody used that word until he started using it. And then it was
Man
everywhere.
Cave came after it because, Mantown was an original for sure.
Yeah, he should have trademarked that, and he could just retire on that money.
Seriously. All right, so let's talk about Eddie Van Halen. The news today coming out that he died in Santa Monica, excuse me, at the hospital surrounded by his family, age 65. We'd known that Eddie Van Halen was struggling and battling cancer for a while now. But I think the news kind of surprised everybody. And obviously anybody that worked in rock and roll had encountered Eddie Van Halen on at least one occasion. And we did a lot of different promotions and things with him. So I wanted to kind of give you a chance to tell some of your Van Halen stories.
Yeah. Now, I don't think I had met you at this point yet, or if I did, I'm not sure if you were at this event, but I believe Van Halen is the first band, the big band that I introduced on stage with Greg. There were a bunch that came one after the other because I started right before the summer of '93. So
I was interning for you guys at the time.
Right. You were there the day I started interning. And the only thing I remember about that concert is that it was at what was the time called Great Woods. And it was when Sammy was already singing with Van Halen.
Come here, Wednesday.
And hello, Wednesday. It's Tuesday.
Yeah.
And
I can't turn the Pug Cam on right now because Kevin's here, so I'll pick her up this way. Say hi, Wednesday.
Hello, Wednesday.
Hi.
He was super. You know how he used to, like in the old videos with David Lee Roth, he was always smiling and happy and stuff like that. That's the exact way he was in person when I met him that first time with Sammy Hagar and the rest of the band. Now, the second time And I am going to, by the way, I think I mentioned this on Twitter or Instagram, but I am going to post pictures of us with Van Halen later. I was in my car when I heard
I know,
that he
it just,
passed
the
away.
news just, it hit the internet and just exploded. And
Yeah,
it's this collective grief. And just to interrupt you for a second,
sure.
these are the days and the times that I miss AAF, because you know what we would have been doing to commemorate a loss of this magnitude in rock and roll. There would
Yeah,
have been online tributes, and we would be playing, you know, all the deep cuts and all of the amazing music and people calling with their stories. And I was so happy that we were coming into the war room tonight, because one of the things that keeps coming up through this lockdown and through the coronavirus is when you lose somebody in this time, there's really a denial of closure, right? Because you can't have the big services that you would want to have. You can't have you been to a wake where you're going through the receiving line and you can't hug or
yeah,
shake the hands of the family? And it's so strange. And so I thought, well, at the very least, we'll all be able to get into the war room and at least be able to grieve this monumental loss together,
yeah,
you
yeah.
know?
Now the last time I saw Eddie uh, was way different than the first time. He was still super happy. He was way thinner, and I believe he still had the long hair. He hadn't grown the beard yet. He still looked the same. He just kind of like a shell of what he was. So I think he was starting to. Uh, he was either about to go clean and quit drinking and everything, or he had
Yeah.
already gotten sick at that point. Because this would have been when Gary Sharon was in the band. So that was the second time that we introduced them on stage.
Was that at the
The
Hard
first,
Rock? Was that the thing we did together at the Hard Rock with Eddie and Gary? And they
uh-huh.
did like a not unplugged thing, but like a stripped down performance when they were in town. And that was 6 months maybe after I started on the air.
Yeah,
And
that was it.
yeah, so that was August of 98. And I remember being there. My show wasn't, I know it's crazy, right? And I was on the air at night then. So this happened during the day. I think people had to win their way in at the Hard Rock.
Yep.
And it was this stripped down thing. And I know Ozone was kind of, I think we broadcast it live during his show. It was like an Ozone Cafe kind of thing. And all of the jocks got to go. And I think I asked Eddie a question. At one point, they were like passing the microphone around and they asked me I can't even remember what I asked him. But then I had to leave to get back to the studio for something before I could take a picture with him. And I was so bummed out that I didn't get to take a picture. And then if I'm
Yeah.
not mistaken, the show, they had to postpone that show at Great Woods that night because somebody got sick. I don't know if it was Gary's voice, but they called me on the hotline in the studio because they knew everybody in the parking lot was listening to AAF to
Yeah.
give an explanation as to why the show had to be postponed. And then they rescheduled it for like the next night or something. Do you guys remember all of this? If you
Well,
guys
that's funny. I did not. So I remember doing the meeting him and all that. I don't remember going to the show. So they must have moved it to the next
I
night, and I
think they
couldn't get back
did.
for it. Yeah,
Yeah.
that sounds very familiar. But it's funny because when Greg and I introduced them on stage back with Sammy Hagar, Extreme was opening for them, I believe. Is that correct? Do you remember that? It was either Extreme or Bon Jovi. So it would have been, but I think Bon Jovi and Extreme sound more like they would have been together.
Maybe.
And then,
Yeah.
yeah, there's, all those, it's so, I don't mean to trivialize things that like people would die to do, but I honestly can't remember. Well, was it Van Halen and Kiss or was it Van Halen Extreme? Because there were so many. It's so quick when you go out, as you know, you hang out backstage and you meet everybody. But when you go out on stage and introduce bands, it's very quick.
And it's very organized. And they say,
Yes.
use the center mic, don't touch the mic, or they have a
Right.
special mic that you're allowed to hold. But, they tell you like, cause it's all timed up to the pyro and the intro music. And so they'd be like,
Right.
you got a minute, go and do your thing. And it's a lot of moving parts when you go out to introduce a band like that, for sure. Cause the production is so huge.
Yeah.
And they're
But
like,
putting
be
it
careful of where
concisely.
you step because there's pyro and explosives on the
Whoops.
stage.
Oh, sorry about that.
Oh God.
Yeah. Whoa. The pyro.
Ah!
But to just to put it concisely, he was a really he did not disappoint to meet him. There's a few people that I can say in the music industry who are huge, and he was one of those people that I put in there that when I met him, I was just in awe, and he was what you would want a rock star to be when you met him.
Yeah.
Not a jerk.
Yeah.
Like super nice. No matter what kind of stories there are about him and his personal life and his struggles and all that, he was not like that in person, and that was really cool.
Keith says that the show was originally supposed to be on a Wednesday and they had to cancel it and they rescheduled it for that Friday night. So I knew that there was something like that there was some kind of illness or technical problems or whatever. And I remember them calling me in the studio, like panicked, like, because it was just in that Van Halen 3 thing. So it was already weird that they had another singer and they put this tour out and it was Gary's hometown show. And so I remember that.
I believe it was Gary that got sick.
Yeah. And he felt so terrible that, of course, the hometown show that they had to reschedule. And then it ended up being on a Friday night and the show was huge. And Michael Voorhees says the Barbary ship is capsizing every time you tip your phone over.
Whoa.
The other time that I met Eddie was when they reunited with Sammy Hagar. And I think this was in, I want to say like 2005 or 2006 maybe. And Shinedown was opening up for them. And I had gone out to Denver to go see the Shinedown guys. And I was backstage with Shinedown, and Brent kind of came over because Eddie wasn't doing a lot of like meet and greets and press stuff at the time. And Brent said, "Have you ever met Eddie?" And I was like, "Not really, like, quickly once at that thing at the Hard Rock." And Brent Smith was like, "Come with me." And Brent grabbed me by the hand and walked me down the hall and walked me into Eddie's dressing room. And when we walked in, it was just Eddie and a younger, obviously, Wolfgang Van Halen. And they were just sitting there. And I remember seeing Eddie. And I remember being shocked that he didn't look the way that Eddie Van Halen looked in my head. Right?
Right.
That he definitely was older and his teeth weren't really right. And I remember looking at his hands because, he had those big knuckles. And I just remember looking at his hands, almost looking like an old man's hands, and trying to figure out like how he would still be able to play and do all of the stuff with the dexterity of his hands. And we talked for a few minutes and he was just sitting there noodling. And the more he was noodling, you could tell he was warming up his hands. And I was like, oh my God, like, he can still play. And so we talked for a few minutes and then we left. And like 20 minutes later, I remember Brent just looked at me and he goes, "Oh my God, I'm so sorry. I never got a picture for you." And so like there I was in this private audience with Eddie Van Halen and Wolfgang while Eddie's just shredding in this little private thing in his lazy boy lounge chair in his dressing room. And, I never got a picture with him, and it bums me out because I've had my picture taken with so many of my rock idols. And that is one that I just always wished and kind of always thought, well, there'll always be another opportunity. And this is one of those lessons that, you think there's always going to be another chance. And that's why we have to value the opportunities that we get when they come around, because they just might not ever come around again.
Right. Do you think, and this is a very, I don't want to say an odd question, but it's a broad question. Do you think Van Halen will try and put together something with his son to record again? Or do you think this is the end of it?
I mean, listen, you look at an artist like Prince or Malcolm Young that we're learning, because we'll talk about it in the music headlines later, that new AC/DC is coming tomorrow. And it's going to feature Malcolm Young guitar tracks, because these guys would just sit at home in their home studios and just record. I have all the faith in the world that there is a treasure trove of guitar stuff that Eddie Van Halen left behind. Yep. And could I see the band trying to finish some of that stuff? Sure. Could I see them
even tour?
And if they don't want to tour, that maybe they would do a tribute show and bring in all of these amazing guitar players. Like, that's what I would like to see.
That would be great.
Is they do it at like Madison Square Garden or something. Or, I mean, if they want to do it anytime soon, they would have to do it virally and remotely. But to be able to bring in every guitar player that, I mean, you look at guys like, I mean, the list is endless of, you know, a guy like Tom Morello or Lenny Kravitz or Zakk Wylde. And you look at these guitar players, every single one of them holds Eddie Van Halen up as a god, you know, etched in the granite of Mount Rushmore of rock. And so I would love to see like an all-star tribute to Van Halen. I think that would be amazing. But I don't know. That's what I would want as a fan, you know?
Has David Lee Roth commented yet?
Not that I had seen since we got in the War Room. I know that Sammy Hagar had put up something on Twitter. It was very short, but basically saying that he was devastated and that he was sending love to the family. You know, it just, I don't know. I mean, obviously the family, you know, Alex, Wolfgang, like the family knew that he was battling this for a long time. And so the family is probably not as surprised as we are as fans. The same thing happened with Neil Peart from Rush. Like the family obviously knew he was sick long before any of us ever found out. We didn't find out until after he passed away. So I would think that that an artist of Eddie Van Halen's caliber, and you know, that someone is going, all right, we have to put some kind of tribute thing to commemorate this monumental loss. Because in rock music, it's like there's only so many gods. Right. And he is one. Or, you know. So, man, it just, I don't know, but, you know, just to have the opportunity, like you were talking about, to just kind of meet him a couple times and to be in the room with him and to kind of see him, you know, just sitting there naturally playing his guitar, and to see him interact with Wolfgang when Wolfgang was younger and on tour with the band. And, you know, it just, you get to see like the human side of, you know, somebody. And it's also a cautionary tale too. I mean, you know, he was one of those people that always loved to smoke and smoked. I mean, it was part of his guitar solos and stuff.
Stuck him in. He stuck the guitars
in the strings. Yeah. So it's like, you know, this is one of those things where, you know, we lost a god because of smoking. You know, or there was that. And then there was also the comments about the metal guitar picks that he used to clench in his teeth because he had to have part of his tongue removed to the cancer. And so I believe it was Eddie that said it's not the smoking, that it was the pick that he used to hold. He had like this metal, I don't know if it was copper or some kind of pick. And I remember reading a story about how he had attributed the mouth cancer to that. Wow. But, you know, I don't know. I'm as Mike Shue would say, I'm not a doctor. And somebody needs to buy Mike Shue a case of beer tomorrow, because we're getting new AC/DC tomorrow. And everybody knows Mike Shue's formula that is completely scientific of any AC/DC album and a case of beer equals a party. So
very nice. We'll have to do that.
Yeah. Well, I'm so glad that everybody loved the podcast episode as much as they did. And it was so cool to, you know, get reconnected. And I'm so glad that you came in the War Room with us tonight too. And we definitely got to do this stuff more often. I love it when we have guests in the War Room because it gives everybody a chance to kind of ask questions, and
I like that.
It takes the pressure off of me, you know.
I'm surprised more people didn't have questions about other things besides impressions. I mean, we were both there for so long together, that you would think there'd be some like burning questions that they would want to know now.
I know, but I think I mean, the great thing about the podcast is I don't edit them. Yeah. So that's the conversation. I mean, sometimes I tighten them up a little bit if somebody takes an abnormally long pause or something just because it sounds weird, but I don't edit them. And so they're just this natural conversation of two or sometimes three or four people just talking about whatever comes up. And I love that, you know, there's no, you know, being in radio, it's like you were always looking at the person you were interviewing with one eye and looking at the clock with the other eye, because you were
Right.
always mindful of staying on time, having to play commercials, all of that kind of stuff.
You
And-
and I probably caught up of 10 years of not really talking to each other
Yeah.
in that podcast. Like we could have kept going because you and I we passed each other in the building and haven't really caught up or talked about anything about people we've lost and being left without a station and all those kind of things just never got talked about.
Karen says she loved your Susan Sarandon story, which I also loved. It was slightly stalkerish and creepy, but it was a very funny story.
Yeah, she was very nice too. And
what was the name of the musical that you mentioned in the podcast? Come From Away, which is the 9/11 musical about Gander, Newfoundland. I did a whole 9/11 podcast last September, which I believe is still up on the AAF website somewhere, where I interviewed a lot of the people that are portrayed in the musical and that were also interviewed as part of the documentary about the people in Gander, Newfoundland. And if you haven't watched that documentary, please Google, because I can't remember the name of it, but just Google Gander, Newfoundland 9/11 documentary, and it will come up. And the reason why I tell you to do it is that this documentary, the anniversary of 9/11 is always a somber time. I mean, you and I talked about it in the podcast because we were together in the studio when all of that stuff happened. And when you hear the story about the people in Gander, Newfoundland, and how they took on all of these transatlantic flights because they weren't allowed to land back in the continental United States after the call had been made because they didn't know how many planes had been hijacked, especially with the 20th anniversary coming up next year, it gives you like 5% of happy feeling, because when you know that all of that devastation was happening in New York and Pennsylvania and Washington, D.C., you know that there were these amazing stories of selflessness and humanity that were happening in Gander, Newfoundland for perfect strangers that had come from all over the world. And it makes you not hurt quite as much. And I mean, especially with all the time that everyone's locked down right now, I'm sure you can find the documentary somewhere online, whether it's on Netflix or whatever, but just please watch it. Paula says, I had to watch Oscar, which of course is the Sylvester Stallone movie that we talked about as well. I did watch Oscar a couple months ago. It's off my bucket list, Melissa says.
Nice.
So I love the fact that people were talking about that movie as well, because it's definitely like a hidden gem for me too. So.
I recommended it to a few people, and after we talked last time, I went and looked up the documentary. I added it to a watch list, and I believe
the 9/11 documentary you're talking about,
the Gander, Newfoundland.
Yeah.
But I believe there is a series coming out that is going to reenact that. It's
no
like
way,
a mini
really?
series. Yeah, it might be on Apple or it's on Netflix. I saw the trailer in like a mash of trailers on YouTube, and that was one of the ones. And I don't remember the name of it. It has a one-word title, but I believe that's what it's about, because it talked about heroes. Had a lot of airplanes in it, and it was in another country, and it had to do with 9/11. And I was kind of not really paying attention, I think that's what it was, because everything about it looked like the same thing that was going on in the documentary. So
Mark says so many people heard about the planes crashing into the World Trade Center on AAF, including me. And that's what's crazy, is that day, that time that we were all in the studio together, when you ask people, where were you on 9/11? So many people's story and answer to that question is, I was at work or in my car and I was listening to AAF.
Yeah.
And it's so strange to be part of such a memory that's kind of carved in people's consciousness,
Yeah. I mean, that and the Boston Marathon bombing.
Yeah.
Where some of us were actually down there when it happened, and we didn't know if some people were okay or if they were hurt that we worked with. That was, on a smaller scale, not to downplay anything. That was, very similar.
Yeah.
Huh.
Joe says, Google Gander, Newfoundland, and you'll find it. So there you go. Well, Kevin,
take a gander.
Yeah, take a gander. I appreciate you coming in the war room so much. I hope
Yes.
you liked it. Come back anytime.
Yeah, hopefully at some point you'll be able to have, have people there.
Yeah.
And it'd be great if you could do it before Halloween. We could all dress in costume.
I know. We have to figure something out just for next week because it's the 100th episode.
Oh, yeah.
It's so crazy that it's already 100 episodes. I can go into syndication and reruns now.
Nice.
But yeah, for sure we'll do that. I mean, the war room, I call it my happy accident because it was just me going live like you are with your like cell phone or whatever. And it turned into the show that now has become something that I know is going to stick around, and it's fun. And I love doing it, and I love the interaction with everybody. And
yeah,
a lot of the artists that come in the podcast, have agreed to come in the war room. And obviously once the world starts opening back up and bands are touring, I'm hoping that I'm going to be able to get, bands and celebrities and guests to come in here and sit on the green couch too. And so,
that'd be great.
Yeah, it'd be really fun. So I'm having a really good time with it.
Good.
So it's awesome. But I love the fact that you came in with us, and I know everybody loved the podcast and loved seeing you and hearing all of your crazy ass voices.
Yes, we'll see if we can come up with some more entertaining things next time. Some fake songs or something. I don't know what we can make fun of anymore. So I have to.
Michelle says, "Goodbye, sir. Love that purple room." Yeah, I love the lighting too. I got to get some of that in MCHQ. I love it.
Yeah, very nice.
All right. Well, I will see you soon, Kevin. Thanks for coming on with us tonight.
You're welcome. Enjoy the rest of the show.
And this interview, in case anybody tuned in halfway through or whatever, the videos get put up not only on Facebook, but on my YouTube channel. And then I always take the audio out and put it up as an After Action Report podcast as well. So everybody will be able to check it out if they missed it live. So
great.
Awesome.
And I'll share the links when you send them to me.
Awesome. All right. Get back to work, Kevin.
All righty. Back to work.
Bye. I'll see you later.
Bye.
All right. So let's see. There he goes. And let me try and get the screen back up and running. There we go. All right, guys. So there he is, the one and only Kevin Barbare. Thank you guys for hanging out with us and asking all your questions and stuff. And we have so much more stuff to talk about. So let's dive into all of the news of the day here in the War Room like we always do. Wednesday, I don't know what happened, but she took off. So if I can get her back here, I'll turn the Pug Cam back on. All right, let's talk about this week's episode of the podcast. This week's episode of the podcast, I am super excited for you guys to hear from Brad Arnold from Three Doors Down, who is such a great guy and super sweet, and just released a solo song actually called Wicked Man. And he is holed up on his farm in Tennessee right now, obviously not being able to tour. And so Brad and I had a chance to kind of talk about all kinds of stuff, going down memory lane with some of the old stories from WAF. He told me the story about writing Kryptonite, which surprised me because I really didn't know that that's when he wrote it, which is crazy. I don't want to spoil it. So I want you guys to be able to hear the story in the War Room. I mean, on the podcast. And so I'm super excited for you guys to hear this podcast episode. The band is just kind of sitting around, kind of waiting to do stuff, just like everybody else. And so Brad and I spent a lot of time talking about Three Doors Down's trips overseas, playing for the troops, and the story behind the When I'm Gone video, which still is, in my opinion, one of the best music videos that's ever been made by any rock band ever. We just talked a lot about life. And I will tell you guys that if you know anyone struggling with addiction, Brad was incredibly open and honest about his struggles with alcoholism and about getting sober. And he attributes a lot of that to his strong religious beliefs, and just talked a lot about the people that inspired him to get sober, the people that he has helped get sober along the way, and just moving forward in your life. We spent a lot of time talking about guns as well because he's quite the shot. And the last time the band was in town, which I believe was last year at the Palladium, he had gone and done some training up at the SIG Academy up in New Hampshire. And we spent a lot of time talking about that. So I brought that up in the podcast as well. So that episode 18, will go live at midnight tonight. So you definitely want to check it out. Michelle says, I hate to make everyone sad, but I have some bad news. My brother Keith's granddaughter, Allison, who is just a little over a year old, had tested positive for COVID-19. She lives in North Carolina. So if anyone wants to say a prayer for her family, my brother, I would appreciate that. So there you go. That's from Michelle. So if you guys want to send your love and support, send it her way. I'm sure the family could use some healing vibes right now. Betty says, meeting and chatting with Brad after a show was a very big highlight of my life. Kryptonite is my favorite driving to the beach song, says Pam. Sending love and healing, says Paula. So yeah, I'm super excited about this week's podcast. So episode number 18 of the Mistress Carrie podcast goes live at midnight tonight, and it features the one and only Brad Arnold from Three Doors Down. There is another feature to the podcast that you may or may not have known yet. And a lot of you guys are talking about it in the comments. So I want to officially announce the Mistress Carrie situation report. You'll notice down in the corner over here that the logo for the sit rep is a little bit different. So you will be able to tell the difference between sit reps and actual numbered episodes of the podcast. But this is one of the reasons why I've told you guys to subscribe to the podcast, because when I release audio outside of the every Wednesday full-length episodes, you'll get them automatically and get alerted if you subscribe to the podcast, however you listen to podcasts. So let me explain the sit rep for you. The difference, the biggest difference, the first difference is that the sit rep is daily. You're going to be able to hear the situation report Monday through Friday. The full length episodes of the podcast sometimes can get you all the way to work and all the way home from work, and sometimes all the way to work again. And so there's so many people that are working from home that have shortened commutes, if any commute at all. And so I wanted to incorporate an aspect of the podcast that was going to be accessible for everyone, regardless of how long you're in the car or regardless of whatever kind of errands you're running throughout the day. If you listen to my radio show, we used to have High Note, Low Note, which would kind of run down all of the news and music for the day. And so it's a little bit high note, low note. It's a little bit podcast. It's a little bit of the music news, the way that we do it here in the War Room. So the situation report will be downloaded before you wake up every morning and will be there for your drive in. Even if your commute is just going to Dunks and back, you will get 5 minutes. So the sit rep is never going to be more than 5 minutes long. And you're going to get rock news, music headlines, entertainment updates, and also some industry information as well. So some of the business aspect behind the music business, especially as the music business tries to rebuild after COVID. It's under 5 minutes long. And if you subscribe to the Mistress Carrie podcast, you're going to get the sit reps every day. So when you open up the podcast and Apple Podcasts, Google Play, Spotify, Pandora, all of the different places that you can listen to the podcast, which are all listed right here, Apple, Google, Spotify, radio.com, iHeartRadio, Stitcher, Deezer, Overcast, Radio Public, TuneIn, Pocket Cast, Pandora, Amazon, and JioSaavn, and also Gaana, which are the two biggest podcast and music streaming outlets in India. You're going to see the whole list of all of the episodes. Now, the difference is full-length episodes like number 18 featuring Brad Arnold from Three Doors Down will actually be numbered. The sit rep is going up as bonus episodes, and they're only 5 minutes long. Now, one of the things that I want you guys to know, one of the features of the sit rep is if you open up a podcast episode in Apple, Google, whatever, and you look into the description, you will always see the links of whoever's on the podcast. You'll always get the links to the sponsors. If we talk about a specific video or something, like the Brad Arnold conversation, we talked a lot about the When I'm Gone video and all the military footage. I put a link to that video up in the description of the podcast to make it easy for you guys to be able to find what it is that we're talking about during the podcast episode. There's always a Spotify playlist link in there as well. And then there's always all of my links for all of my social media pages, my Pandora, Cameo, all of that stuff. I do the sit rep a little bit different in that when you click on the description of a sit rep episode, all of the links to the full stories are going to be there as well. So if you're on your way or you're in the drive-through line at Dunks and you hear me talking about the Motorhead Lemmy COVID-19 masks, I'm only going to give you the highlights of the story. But if you want to be able to go and buy them, you could go in the description of the sit rep and the links for all of this stuff will be there to make it easy for you guys to get the full story with all of the details and the clickable links to be able to buy whatever I'm talking about, if it's a band selling something funny or just for you to get more information. So I spend a lot of time making sure, knowing that you guys listen to these podcasts a lot while you're doing something else. You could be cooking, driving, running and exercising. And so you're not just sitting there in front of a computer and able to instantly Google stuff. You always know that if I'm talking about something in the sit rep, that the links are in the description so you can reference it later. And see, Melissa says, my longest commute is walking from the bedroom and going to the kitchen for a wake-up cup of coffee, not quite 5 minutes. Well, you can do that. I mean, you can literally, listen to the sit rep while you're spending your quality time in the bathroom in the morning. That's why I made it short, and it's just the headlines, and it's to keep you guys informed so that if you just want to know, what did I miss? And I'm not talking about politics or any kind of news headlines, but I'm talking about the stuff that is all of the stuff that brings us together, the music and lifestyle and entertainment news and headlines, that you will get access to all of that stuff. So I'm super proud of the sit rep, and you're going to get it Monday through Friday. I'm not going to do it on the weekends. This is more for a working commute, keep you up to date with what's going on. And Elsa says, I listen to the podcast when I go to work. Michael says, I listen to podcasts while doing my workout. Amanda says, I listen to the podcast while I'm at work. And so I really wanted to give you guys just a really quick way to get plugged in so that as the world starts opening up and bands started announcing tours and shows, you'll be able to get the information. And in the meantime, the bands are doing live streaming shows and releasing new music and all of that kind of stuff. And I wanted it to be not just a weekly music news segment that we do here in the War Room, but to be able to have it accessible so that every day you're not going to miss something. And so that is why I launched the situation report yesterday. I didn't make too big of a deal out of it at first because I wanted to make sure that the mechanisms were all right in case I had any technical difficulties. Listen during a quickie, Mark says. Annette says, I listen at work. It streams through my Google Home while I'm getting ready for my workday in my living room. So there's a perfect example. You can just listen to it while you're getting ready, and it's fast and informative. And at least you're going to start your day and kind of know what's going on. Now, obviously, in the middle of the afternoon, if Eddie Van Halen passes away, the sit rep would already be released. So tomorrow's sit rep will have all of the details and up-to-date information about the passing of Eddie Van Halen. So can only listen to the sit rep during a quickie. Listen to the podcast driving to and at work. Thank you very much, Jared. I appreciate that. So I wanted to give you guys the long form episodes for you to really be able to get to know the people that are featured in the numbered full length episodes. But then I also wanted to give you guys some podcast features that were super fast. I know it can be intimidating when you look at the podcast and you're like, Jesus Christ, Mistress Carrie, it's 2.5 hours long. This, is always going to be under 5 minutes, and it's going to be jam-packed with stories that I think you're going to be interested in and things that I think you're going to want to know about. So there you go. I listen in the car, says Eric. Have you heard from your husband at all? Christina wants to know. Yes. Luckily, he has great access to really good internet. So I have been able to FaceTime with him, and we've been able to text, and we've been able to have phone conversations and stuff. So it's been really nice. So he is safe, he is healthy, and he is doing okay. And I appreciate you guys thinking about him. So Again, I will show you where you can get all of the podcast episodes and the sit rep and the ever expanding empire that is the Mistress Carrie podcast. Apple, Google, Spotify, radio.com, iHeartRadio, Stitcher, Deezer, Overcast, Radio Public, TuneIn, Pocket Cast, Pandora, Amazon, and so on and so on and so on. Just click subscribe on whatever mechanism you use to listen to the podcast. And then every day you can just check that and there'll be a new sit rep and you'll get notifications when I upload new stuff as well. Again, I want to thank the 86 countries that have interacted with the Mistress Carrie podcast, and the empire continues to grow. So I want to thank you guys so much for spreading the word about everything and, sharing the love of music and everything else that we're talking about with everybody. So speaking of the music headlines, let's talk about some. The Save Our Stages bill was folded into the HEROES Act, which it was announced this afternoon that the president said that he is asking for the Senate and Congress to put off voting on the folded into the HEROES Act. So they've asked to put on hold the relief bill known as the HEROES Act, the relief bill from COVID, obviously, until after the election. So the Senate can focus on confirming his Supreme Court nominee. And without getting political too much, we've talked about this in many episodes of the podcast. The entertainment business is the number one export of the United States. And there are millions of people that are tied to the entertainment business. And there are venues that we all know and love that are privately owned that we are in danger of losing. And those jobs, we are in danger of losing those as well. And there are a lot of people in the entertainment industry that are not world famous and not billionaires that are struggling because they are not allowed to go back to work. And those people specifically have not yet received any relief at all from any of the relief bills and packages that have gone through. And it was a huge thing for the Save Our Stages bill to get folded into the HEROES Act. And the news today coming that the HEROES Act is getting put on the back burner, I think is a huge mistake and going to do irreversible harm to the industry. And it just made me really sad to hear that. Huge news from AC/DC. There is a new song called Shot in the Dark, the first single from the new AC/DC album, which I believe they are calling Power Up. And new AC/DC is coming tomorrow. Crazy. I know. It was confirmed that Malcolm Young's guitar parts, like I was talking about with Kevin Barbare, are going to be included in the album. The lineup, because AC/DC is back together with Angus, Brian Johnson, Cliff Williams, Phil Rudd, and Stevie Young, is going to be taking the place of Malcolm Young on this album. And this is just huge, huge news. I mean, we were talking about this a year ago on AAF. We were talking about it earlier this year before the station went off the air that this was going to be the year that AC/DC got back together. There were so many rumors about how they had been spotted outside recording studios together in Canada. And now we definitely know it's confirmed, and we're getting a new AC/DC song tomorrow. And it's called Shot in the Dark, which I am super excited about. The world could use some AC/DC. Linkin Park is doing a live stream and a Q&A. It's going to be the group's first interview together since 2017. You can go to watch.linkinpark.com this coming Friday, and they are going to be debuting a live concert film. This is all in commemoration of the 20th anniversary of Hybrid Theory. And so you can go to watch.linkinpark.com to get all of the details on that. But if you're a Linkin Park fan, I think this is going to be incredibly emotional. And to be able to watch this live stream concert from the heyday of Hybrid Theory era Linkin Park is huge. Also on Friday, it's John Lennon's 80th birthday celebration featuring Peter Gabriel. That's going to be streaming online as well, starting at 3 o'clock. Speaking of the live stream, Seven Dust live concert stream, their only concert of the year, is happening on October 23rd. So I wanted to put in a plug for that again. There is a new Tommy Lee album called Andro that is coming out on October 16th. Tommy Lee doing some interviews recently about how in the height of his alcoholism, he was drinking 2 gallons of vodka per day. And he was inspired by his new wife to get sober. And he has been sober for almost a year and been spending a lot of the time during the lockdown working on this new album, Andro, which is going to be his 3rd solo record. And that is coming out on October 16th. Guns N' Roses announced a partnership with Jersey Jack Pinball. They're coming out with 3 different tiers of an officially licensed Guns N' Roses pinball that is based on the Not in This Lifetime tour. It's going to have the Not in This Lifetime tour set list on there. And basically, if you're going to be playing the pinball, you are supposed to get the crowd more amped up as you're bouncing the ball around to get access to more pyro. And people are saying that this pinball game is just unbelievable. Whatever pinball vendors sell Jersey Jack pinball, that's where you can get it. I'm sure it's between $3,000 and $5,000, I think. But if you want to check it out, you can also go to the Jersey Jack pinball website and they have all of the pictures. It's all officially licensed. The high tier ones come autographed. It's really cool. I talked briefly about the Lemmy Masks. Motorhead is coming out with officially licensed masks. It's a pack of 3 and it makes the bottom half of your face look like Lemmy from Motorhead, making all of his famous Lemmy faces with the warts and the whole thing. It's $20 for the 3-pack and you can get them at shop.motorhead.com. And if you're going to try and avoid getting COVID, why not do it while looking like Lemmy? It's freaking hilarious. Speaking of live streaming shows, Mr. Bungle has announced that they are doing a Halloween stream. It's called The Night They Came Home. Sorry, there's a typo up there. Let me see if I can fix that. Can I fix it? I don't think oh, there we go. The Night They Came Home. There we go. And it is going to feature some guests, including Scott Ian and Dave Lombardo. And the lineup of Mr. Bungle is all right there. So if you're a Mr. Bungle fan, especially just a Mike Patton fan, there's nothing better around Halloween than that. Except for Slipknot and Rob Zombie. And Corey Taylor said in a recent interview that Clown is in a really strange space and they're already talking about new Slipknot, which is very exciting. And John Five said in a recent interview that the upcoming Zombie record is done. And he's talking about how it is the best Zombie record that Rob has ever done. So I'm really excited about that as well. And speaking of Halloween, Ice Nine Kills recently announced on their social media outlets that they have released their exclusive app called Psychos Only. So if you are an Ice Nine Kills fan, they have their own app now and it's called Psychos Only. So there you go. So those are your music headlines. If you are celebrating a birthday today, there weren't too many people that share your birthday with you. Matthew Sweet and Tommy Stinson from The Replacements. Oh, I had the plug for my birthday. I left that in there because my birthday was last week. So happy birthday to everybody. Cheers to everybody that celebrated a birthday over the last week and everybody celebrating today. Cheers to you guys. I also want to, let me see if I can get this thing to work. Sorry, I'm having some technical difficulties. I also want to welcome Michelle and Noelle to the official Mistress Carrie fan club. They got their Mistress Carrie backstage passes on Patreon, so I want to welcome them. One of the things that I'm using Patreon for is kind of like a focus group. And so when it came to the sit rep, I asked the people that had Mistress Carrie backstage passes, what kind of stories and what kind of things you want to hear in the sit rep. And I get a lot of great feedback. I love it because it's super interactive. It's a smaller group than here in the War Room where sometimes the comments go by so fast that I can't read them all. And there's a lot of other exclusive content, blogs, photos. I update it every day and it's super affordable. So if you are looking for more interaction from me, and obviously as the world starts to open back up again, there's going to be a lot more opportunities, including discounted merchandise on the upcoming Mistress Carrie online store. So if you have a backstage pass, you're going to always have ways to get discounted merchandise. And I'm also going to be premiering a lot of the merch to the people with the backstage passes first. and they're going to get kind of a first look. And also I asked them what kind of merchandise they want to see from me. So there's a lot of interaction on Patreon. So if you don't know what it is, you can download the Patreon app. And if you go to the website, patreon.com/Mistress Carrie, you can get yourself a Mistress Carrie backstage pass. Want to remind you of all the places you can find me on social, at Mistress Carrie on Twitter, Facebook and Instagram, or at Mistress Carrie WAF. Obviously, if you're watching this on Facebook, you already know. We take Cocktails in the War Room's videos after the episode airs live on Facebook and put it up on my YouTube channel. So if you're watching it on YouTube, the official YouTube channel is Mistress Carrie. And then my Cameo page, if you want me to make custom Cameo videos for you, is at Mistress Carrie. And you may or may not have noticed I made my first TikTok video. I thought long and hard about what it should be, and I wanted to make sure that I was using it right and I didn't screw anything up. So the other night I was inspired by Wednesday, who was gnawing on this bone in my ear on the couch for like what seemed like forever. And so I decided to take that audio of that little kid that's, "Can I pet that dog? Can I pet that dog?" If you watch TikTok videos, you know what I'm talking about. If you don't, I don't know what to tell you, but I made my first TikTok video. So you can follow me on TikTok at Mistress Carrie as well. And I'm going to start putting more videos up there. Shannon, hopefully zip up hoodies. Yes, I promise they're coming. Yes, I like the zip up ones better because especially for girls, pulling stuff over our head, it always mashes up our hair. So, Melissa says October is Matthew Shepard month. He was murdered in 1998 because he was gay. I'm very familiar with that story, Melissa. It is absolutely a horrific story. And producer Mike says, don't forget Smith and Myers at the drive-in in New Hampshire on the 15th. Thank you very much, Mike. That's why you earn your big fat paycheck of nothing. But thank you. Of course, if you guys didn't hear producer Mike's episode of the podcast talking about the AAF to Afghanistan trip, you definitely want to check that one out. There were a lot of great behind the scenes stories and memories. So there you go. Pushing your social paces screen next week. Michael, my TXT here says nothing here yet. What do you mean? On TikTok? What do you mean? I see what you mean. I can fix that in real time. Boom. Just like that, it's gone. Thank you for the tip. I totally missed that on the screen. So yes, there is now TikTok. There is a TikTok video up there. Smith and Myers at the drive-in in New Hampshire on the 15th. It's a labor of love, Mike says. Thank you. Mike gets a free sweatshirt, says Annette. Producer Mike is the freaking man, says Eric. Absolutely. I can't wait until someday I can actually, I don't know, maybe bring him on as an actual producer. Someday, maybe. Thank you for sharing this. Girl, we will Venmo you money for pre-website hoodies. Brianna, you don't have to do that. They are coming. I am working on it right now. I will tell you that I am doing online tutorials, learning how to actually upload content onto my new website because I don't have a webmaster anymore like I did at AAF. So I have to do all this myself. So I have to learn how it fucking works, which is hard. And I am also in the final stages of sourcing a lot of the initial things that are going to go in the merch store. And I'll tell you that I'm going to roll out an initial line of merchandise with the goal of adding something new every month after that. And so I think the way that it's going to work, I haven't finalized all the plans yet. There will be a discount code for new pieces of merchandise that only people with the Mistress Carrie Backstage Pass will be able to get. So whenever anything new comes out, the Backstage Pass holders are going to get first crack at it, and they're going to be able to order it cheaper than everybody else. So you got to do a Cameo from my brother-in-law. Jen, just go to the Cameo app, search Mistress Carrie and put it in, and I will do it. Is there a webmaster in the war room? No, there isn't. There's nobody here besides Wednesday down the hall. So I control the war room in real time, which is why when things get fucked up, I can't blame anybody but me because I'm the one that does it all. So, Michael says, if you're watching an internet stream in your tent, does that mean you're really camping? Are you watching your internet video by lamplight? The Camp Carrie bobblehead. Yeah, there's a lot of plans. I'm super excited about a lot of the stuff that we have going on. So we're going to do some really awesome things. And I'm hoping to get stuff done before the end of October. I know the timeline is kind of pushed back a little bit, but it's been a little crazy, and I am a staff of one. So I am working on it. It's totally happening. So there you go. I really, you just hear the computer making noises. Today, when I heard the news about Eddie Van Halen, I was super bummed out. And then I started thinking about, like I was telling Kevin Barbare earlier, about how we would have handled it when I was at the radio station and how WAF would have paid tribute. And one of the things that took a little bit of that sting away was knowing that we were all going to be together tonight to be able to talk about Eddie Van Halen and talk about the impact that he had, and to just be able to mourn his loss. And so I'm grateful for you guys, and I appreciate you joining me in the war room tonight, so that we could all be together to kind of share in our collective grief. There's no way to overstate Eddie Van Halen's impact on rock and roll. There are some amazing guitar players out there that are pillars in their own right, that are masters of their craft, that hold Eddie Van Halen up as a god. I know that we talked about it in the past, but when Dimebag Darrell was killed, Eddie Van Halen was one of the guitar players that took part in the memorial service. And not only was Dimebag Darrell buried in a Kiss casket because he was such a huge Kiss fan, but Dimebag Darrell, some people still don't know, but I think it's pretty much widely known. Eddie Van Halen always had those famous guitars. Of course, there's the red one with the black and white stripes, but there was always the black guitar that had the yellow stripes all over it as well. Dimebag Darrell was buried with that guitar because he held Eddie Van Halen up as a guitar god. And not only were they peers in music, and not only was Eddie Van Halen an inspiration for Dimebag Darrell, but they were friends. And so Eddie Van Halen buried Dimebag Darrell holding that Eddie Van Halen black and yellow guitar. And that memory and that act of selflessness, I mean, everybody knows what that guitar is worth. And the fact that he was willing to put it with Dimebag Darrell, to me, was a gesture and spoke so many words without saying anything. And so one of the other things that kind of got me by today was the idea that Dimebag Darrell is jamming with his hero today. And I made a joke on Twitter that if any lightning strikes the earth today, that it will be from all of the immense shredding happening wherever those two guys are right now. And it just, for as sad as it is to lose someone like that, we also have to be grateful that they were here. There are very few rock and roll memories that don't have Van Halen as part of the soundtrack. And, like Betty says, Eddie is my number one. Christine says, thanks for being here for us tonight. It's such a sad day. Terrence says, cancer took many greats: Eddie Van Halen, Neil Peart, David Bowie, Richard Wright of Pink Floyd, Ronnie Montrose, Greg Lake. I mean, the list goes on, and you can argue about whether it could have been preventable or not, but what can't be argued is his impact on all of our lives. And so the fact that we've all decided to get together tonight and to commemorate this loss and to be able to mourn and grieve together as a rock community, I think speaks volumes to his legacy. That it doesn't matter, how long after today, I believe, do I have, how long after today, people are still going to be talking about Eddie Van Halen. He sold more than 80 million albums worldwide. He was inducted into the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame as part of the band in 2007. He's the holder of 3 U.S. patents for guitar, including the drawing that you see there on the screen, which was for the flip down paddle so that he could hold his guitar tabletop while standing so that he could tap on the strings. And that's actually the diagram that was filed with the patent office, which I thought was really cool. So I think that moving forward, like I said, the last night AAF was on the air, that to wear your AAF gear proudly to show that you were always a part of something special. I think every time you see a Van Halen shirt or a Van Halen sticker, you hear those songs, and generations of rock bands after will talk about the impact that Eddie Van Halen had on music. And it's undeniable, his influence. And we were all changed by his performance. And, I'm just grateful that we had him for as long as we had him, because, where would rock and roll be without him? Paula says, heaven is electrified right now. Amanda says, this place is therapy in a way. I totally get it. It is for me too. Joe says the eruption solo. Seriously. Melissa says, if Betty White dies before the end of 2020, we are all doomed. Let's not even talk about that. We are all touched by music. It has helped us smile through many tears. Terrence says, I fear losing David Gilmour. This is something that I talked to a friend of mine about today. Losing younger artists like Chester Bennington or Chris Cornell or Lane Staley or Kurt Cobain, that's tragic because it's so unexpected, and that they had so much more of their life to live. We're also living in a world where so many of our rock heroes are aging to the point where we could lose not just Eddie Van Halen, but we really need to savor the fact that the Stones are still around, that Ozzy's still around, that Jimmy Page and Robert Plant are still around, that, Roger Waters and David Gilmour and Angus Young, the list goes on of these influential artists that have lived full lives and have continued to create. Paul McCartney is 80. I can't even begin to wrap my brain around the idea that we could lose a lot of these artists in the coming years. And so we need to not only teach the future generations about the impact of that, but we also need to really take the time and appreciate the fact that they're still here, and to love the music, because at any time we could lose it. And today we learned that, rumors of a Van Halen reunion and a tour and all of that are gone now. And we live in a world without Eddie Van Halen. And that sucks. Donna says, I found my brother's Van Halen album. I'm going to frame a bunch of albums and the album covers and hang them up. Karen says, I better die before Ozzy. I can't fathom losing him. Brian May and Roger Taylor are still here. Those are more perfect examples that we have these amazing artists that have shaped our lives, that have created the soundtrack for all of our memories. And they also planted the seeds for all of our collective love of music. And we need to make sure that we are savoring that, because we could lose them at any time. And it's just like that relative that you never had a chance to kind of tell them how much you appreciated them, and then they're gone and you lose that opportunity. And so Pete Townsend and Roger Daltrey are still here. Exactly, Terrence. Like, that's the kind of stuff I'm talking about. So we just need to just be conscious of the fact that, we have lived through so much amazing music in this world, and savor it. Sip from the cup of rock, because at any time we could wake up and we could lose someone that we just absolutely cherish as an artist. Brianna says, Eddie Van Halen is now with Hendrix, Prince, Zappa, Les Paul, Glenn Campbell, Stevie Ray, Dwayne Allman, Jimmy Page, B.B. King, Chuck Berry. I mean, talk about a fucking jam session. Seriously. And Dimebag, too. And you know that Vinnie Paul is like, I got drums. Ted Nugent. Yeah, I mean, it's crazy. So it made it a little bit easier to handle today, knowing that I was going to be able to talk this through with you guys tonight. So I want to toast you guys, but more importantly, I want to toast Eddie Van Halen, who, even if you never met him, touched your life. And even if you didn't like Van Halen, which I can't imagine that you could listen to rock music and not like Van Halen, the bands you do love will attribute their inspiration to Eddie Van Halen. So for helping to shape all of our love of rock and for inspiring countless generations of guitar players and musicians. Eddie, we love you. Cheers. Guys, thank you for always being here for me. I love our time in the war room. This is episode 99. I have no idea what next week is going to be, but I will try and come up with some ideas. I'll bounce some ideas off of everybody that's got a Mistress Carrie backstage pass, and I will meet you guys here in the war room next Tuesday night at 8:30. Don't forget, midnight tonight, Brad Arnold from Three Doors Down is on the podcast. Oh, wait, Wednesday. Do you want to come up and say hi to everybody? There you go. I was thinking that we were going to get out of the war room without being able to use the Pug Cam. There we go. Good girl. What are you doing? You want to say hi to everybody? They're over here. See them? See them? Do you want to play with your new toy that you got? What are you doing? Mike says Wolfgang's Rolling Stone piece hurt to read. Yeah, his you know what? I actually put his quote here and I forgot to show it to you guys. Wolfgang's statement about his dad today announcing the death of the late great Eddie Van Halen. I can't believe I'm having to write this, but my father, Edward Ludwig Van Halen, lost his long and arduous battle with cancer this morning. He was the best father I could ever ask for. Every moment I've shared with him on and off stage was a gift. My heart is broken, and I don't think I'll ever fully recover from this loss. I love you so much, Pop. So I really wanted to put that quote up here for you guys because it was incredibly touching. Of course, Wolfgang Van Halen, an only child, and in recent years was a member of the band, and I can't imagine what it is like to be Wolfgang Van Halen today and losing your idol and your father and your creative partner. And so, yeah, you're right, Mike. It's incredibly difficult to read. Wednesday, can you stop showing everybody your butthole? We can't end this incredible tribute to Eddie Van Halen with your butthole. Put your butthole away. This is how the war room. This is when the wheels fall off the wagon. All right, don't forget you guys can follow Wednesday on Instagram too. I'll put that gratuitous plug in there for this pillow throwing pain in the ass that I call my co-host. Say goodnight, Wednesday. Say goodnight. Really? Somebody finally woke up. It's going to be a long night. All right, guys. Thank you so much for hanging out with me in the war room. Download the podcast at midnight and a new sit rep every Monday through Friday when you wake up. Less than 5 minutes for all of your rock, music, entertainment, headlines. And I will see you guys later. Say goodnight, Wednesday. Really?